All right, World War II in the Americas, talking about Native Americans. Now, when we're talking about the United States government and Native Americans, it is important to understand that there is a long history of broken promises and real just not good treatment going on. Native Americans are not going to become full-fledged American citizens until the Nationality Act of 1940. Realize the United States gets involved in World War II in 1941. World War II is going to start in Europe in 1939. So at the time Hitler invades Poland, the beginning of World War II, Native Americans were not even considered U.S. citizens. So the Nationality Act of 1940 is what's ultimately going to give Native Americans their citizenship. Additionally, we got to talk about understanding with Native Americans, the whole reservation system set up in the late 1800s, where Native Americans were put on their own little sovereign land, where they could control themselves, rule themselves, have their own government, but it's within kind of the United States. So think of it kind of like a autonomous region of a different country. That's kind of how reservation systems are set up. However, on these reservations, there was a lot of resources that the United States government deemed as essential. Now, this is going to be particularly important when it comes to once the decision was made to create the atomic bomb. Okay, if you're going to create an atomic bomb, you need uranium. Uranium comes out of the ground on the mine. These Native American resources, or Native American reservations, have a lot of these resources. So the United States is definitely going to want those, and that's going to be playing a large role. This Native American land is going to be taken to be used as internment camps and then as military bases. Okay, if you've got uranium on your reservation, the United States government is going to come in there and take it during this time. The internment camps for the Japanese, which we'll be talking about later, a lot of their native land is going to be used for the internment camp because it's oftentimes very rural, very kind of middle of nowhere. Also, the belief is that these people could be sympathetic to the enemy. We don't want them living near our cities, so might as well put them out here. Same with military bases going on right in here. We're going to get the Onondagas villages burned. These are on the Aleutian Islands, way up on the edge of Alaska, pretty much in the Arctic Circle. The fear was that the Japanese are going to come in here and take them and then continue their island in the Pacific island hopping campaign, take over Alaska, Canada, and then ultimately the United States. So we can't have the Japanese take them. We're just going to burn them to the ground. So the United States government burned these villages to the ground to make sure that the Japanese did not take them. The Native Americans, though, are going to be playing a vital role in taking back the islands of Attu and Kiska. This is going to be the only two battles fought on the American mainland, with the exception of Pearl Harbor. These are in the Aleutian Islands as well, kind of near the villages that were burned to keep the Japanese from taking it. And these two islands the Japanese ultimately did take. The Native Americans are fighting alongside the United States, and alongside the Canadians are going to ultimately fight and take back these islands. The natives were particularly important here because they were skilled kayakers and they were skilled trackers. They knew what they were doing, they knew how to fight, they knew this area well, and it's ultimately going to help the United States take back these islands from the Japanese. Native Americans are going to be seen as vital to the war effort, and this is done for a number of reasons. Number one, they were in close proximity to the natural resources. So the United States is going to make sure that they're on good terms as best as they could be with these Native Americans to make sure that their resources are available. Number two, the natives living on these regions were willing to work in the mines. They could work in the mines. Mining is considered a dangerous job even today in 2021. That was definitely the case back then as well. You need these minerals to get them out of the ground to use them, particularly, again, once the atomic bomb is decided to be made. So Native Americans are going to be playing a vital role in that effort as well. This is going to be particularly impactful for Native American women. Native American women are going to become firefighters during this time, mechanic, welders, and farmers, again, stepping up to take the jobs left by men. Native American men are going to enlist, Native Americans in general, not just men, are going to enlist at the highest number per capita of any group in the United States of America. This is even, I believe, true up until today as well, that Native Americans serve at a higher per capita rate in the military than any other group. And there's a number of different reasons for this. Some of it has to go back to the defending your land, defending your country, and protecting it. But there's a number of reasons for this as well, which we're not really going to talk about right now, but understand that Native Americans do enlist in the United States military at the highest number of any group. Now, this is particularly important when we look back at the history of Native Americans in the United States. The series of really broken promises and horrible treatment by the U.S. federal government and the U.S. military, looking at like a Wounded Knee, for example, where the military just shot and killed natives for just really existing. So it is important to understand that they're really willing to stand up and fight, the highest number of any group, which really says a lot right through there. The Navajo Nation is going to be playing a particularly large role in the United States war effort because the United States military needed a code that the Germans could not break. Okay, the Germans were breaking code over radio communications. You cannot be communicating with radio communications if the enemy knows what you're doing, because the element of surprise is going to be gone. So they're going to use Navajo. Now, Navajo is going to be used because it is a spoken language and not a written language, and there were only 30 non-native speakers worldwide. Okay, those who did speak Navajo were on the Navajo reservation worldwide. Otherwise, there's going to be 30. So the odds of the Germans breaking this code are going to be very, very slim. So what they're going to do is they're going to get 29 recruits, and they're going to tell them to come up with a dictionary and then memorize these terms. Okay, they're going to be using stuff like this. So if we're going to spell out a word, we're going to use the English word for cat. Okay, for the letter C, it starts with cat, and we're going to use the moesi, which is the Navajo word for cat. So if I'm trying to spell out something that starts with the letter C, I'm going to say moesi. Versus cat or the letter C, which is going to be effective because the Germans and the Japanese, when they hear this, they're like, what the heck is this? They have no clue. The other Navajo speaker is going to know moesi, cat. That means the letter C. Good. Ice, letter I. C-I. Okay, I can figure out kind of what's going on, and it's going to be playing a large role in this. It's going to be particularly used in the Pacific theater. Primarily, it was used in Europe, but just to a much lesser degree. Also going to be used in the Korean War before it's finally going to be declassified. This code was never broken, okay? Never broken. The Germans, the Japanese tried their hardest. They could not do it. Around half of all Native Americans are going to be participating in the war effort to some degree. Many did not return to the reservation after the war, which is going to be vital and going to cause a series of economic issues on the reservation. Even up until today, some of the poorest areas in the United States are these Native American reservations. Those who did return to the reservation oftentimes attempted to improve the standards of living on the reservations. Okay, previously the reservations were really kind of just turned aside by the government. Okay, not a lot of economic opportunity going on as well. And those who came back oftentimes tried to do this, and many were rejected for this idea because they saw it as a foreign excursion into their culture. Realize, again, historically speaking, the United States government's plan was to kill the Indian and save the man, get rid of any bit of culture. A lot of people on the reservations saw this simply as another attempt for this to happen, as an excursion into their culture, and they did not want that. So it's going to lead to a series of economic issues on the reservation that sadly are still prevalent up until today. That is all for now. Questions, comments, put it down below. Otherwise, I will see you later. Good luck.